24 for your support and your enthusiastic for Dow Science. And we had the first conference, and also very grateful for Trevor. And, he come to our conference, did an amazing presentation and a lot of interest out of that. And also I'm very curious to learn more about his work. So we're very, very privileged today to be able to have him to give us a more extended talk today. And also apologize, there's some time arrangement schedule conflicts, so much going on. And apparently we have meditation called Divine Love Meditation. And because it is scheduled on the same Zoom account, so we have to, in a half an hour part, take a break and then coming back again for 15 minutes. So apologize for that. But Trevor, thank you so much for and also Trevor have amazing insights. I'm very admiring his work and also his dedication to help people, and also his great support for Dow Science. I'm very, very grateful, and also wonderful to meet with him, spend some time with him. We're dancing together, having lunch, which is such a wonderful time. He's just had amazing, beautiful personality, and very, very inspired. And also Karina, maybe you have his complete bio, maybe you can read that. I was actually just coming from another meeting, so maybe you can read the
Yes, yes, I
Trevor
will.
in the proper way.
Yes, I will be very happy to do that. I'm so eager to hear about your method and to try it on spot also. So Dr. Trevor Griffiths, he studied medicine at Oxford, and his focus was on neuroscience and the immunology of cellular communication. He had also some basic studies of Chinese medicine and I Ching. For 25 years, he was a pioneering systemic family practitioner. Just give me 1 second so I can unmute everyone. Oh, but everybody is unmuted. Sorry, I apologize. And during his practice, he was able to develop an emotional literacy lifelong learning method based in the new science of complex nonlinear adaptive systems. Wow, it's difficult to read it, just to comprehend it. So his method is used in people's homes, workplaces, and schools to prevent problems from escalating as they rise into disruptive crises, restoring inner and social order from chaos by consistent feedback learning. He has left medicine, having founded a training charity, the Emotional Logic Center, which has become international in the last 20 years, with a strong schools program in UK, led by former head teachers. In the last 5 years, he has also returned to teaching how the depth of personal health and wholeness is through our inner human heart embedded in the quantum field unfolding from Tao in the grace of God, in which we all relationally participate. So welcome, Dr. Griffiths. So fascinating to hear more details about your work. Thank you for being here with us.
Well, and thank you for the invitation to come and join you. It's a great privilege, and I so enjoyed the conference in Toronto, meeting so many interesting, lovely people. It was a transformative time for me to realize just how many people there were, all thinking along the same lines. And one theme that'll emerge through the talk I'm going to give, and there'll be a bit of activity in the middle of it. What I saw in the Toronto conference is how the concept of health and wholeness is one of movement in Tao Science. And moving towards movement has become a real theme in the work that I do and there's a real coherence with what is going on here. So thank you again for the invitation. Now, hopefully, you will have received in your invitation emails a link to a site which we call the Emotional Logic Tools site. And there will be an opportunity in the middle of this for you to actually practice using it, and then hopefully maybe to share some of the patterns, the emotional patterns that you come up with, based around a story, not about personal issues, but based on a story. Now, it'll really help if you have signed up for that account, if you have it open in another tab, so that you'll be able to go from here to that tab and then come back. And then if you're experienced at sharing your screen onto Zoom, then hopefully 2, 3, 4 people might share their patterns. Because when we do a live course, let's say there's a dozen people in it, maybe more, one of the great insights is how everybody approaches a story with a different sort of emotional response to it. And the tools that I'm going to show you are able to map people's unique emotional responses, from which we can start to understand them and they can understand life in a new way. So I just want to emphasize, if you have opened up that site, have it running on another tab. And I can do something if people haven't, so don't worry, you won't miss out completely. But thank you. So it's probably best if I share a PowerPoint. Okay, how are we doing? Okay, hopefully you can all see that. Cora, is it a thumbs up? Is it showing all right for you? Good on, thank you. So, emotional logic and Dao science, a method for healthy emotional adaptability. There's just a key phrase in the middle of it. Emotion is information emerging as your physical and your spiritual natures meet. So I'd just like to have that in the background of your minds as we approach this. So you've already heard a bit about my background. I studied medicine at Oxford, interested in neuroscience and immunology. It's all about communication patterns in networks of communication. I also had an introduction to Chinese medicine and I Ching at that time. But one of the things that changed my approach to medicine was that I had a precognitive dream that saved my life, because I was a bit of an unusual student. I rode a motorbike rather than a push bike as a student. And I had this dream that foretold my death in an accident on the motorcycle. It was so stark that a month later, I was able to spot the situation arising and able to alter what I would naturally have done, and pulled off from the route I would have followed to just watch this car spin in the middle of the road. And it definitely would have knocked me off and killed me if I'd been there. And that basically showed me that the scientific view of space and time that I was being taught chemistry and medicine in is not the whole story when it comes to relationships between people. The driver of that car and myself were in some sort of strange relationship, which had merged in a dream in advance of an event, which allowed me to have the information I needed to make a counterintuitive choice of my behavior. And that was staggering. And that memory is just so fresh for me still, all these decades later. And there have been many other experiences, which I'm actually recording on my Substack, which I think are evidence of the fact that we need a different way of looking at human life and the physical world to the way scientific materialism has been talking about it. And Dao science is right on that same track that I'm on. So we had a real meeting in Toronto about that. So you've heard about my medical practice and the developing emotional logic. What is emotional logic? It's a mental framework that makes sense of unpleasant loss emotions so that it can promote health by providing conversational skills and action planning, because we've made sense of those emotions. We'll look into that obviously a lot more as I go along. Can I just ask, Cora, are you seeing a toolbar at the top of the screen or not? Or is it only on my computer? I think it's
I
maybe
don't,
only on. You
no,
don't
I
see it. Thank you very
no,
much.
yeah.
That's okay. It's just my thank you. So, relational systems. This is what this is all about. And there are spiritual and physical processes on the go within relational systems in which we are embedded. Now, as a medical doctor, I looked on emotion as energy in motion. Emotion is energy in motion. Our emotions are the shaping of our entire body chemistry into a pattern which prepares our inner energy for movement, for action, either out into the world to achieve something or to move inwards so that we can reflect on life and slightly disengage from situations. But there's motion in it. And we're built to be in relationships. That's called systemic life. We're in networks of relations, systems of relationships. And we're moved constantly by information flying around in these. A lot of it is subtle. We're not aware of it. But obviously, a lot of it is. We're aware of what people are saying and so on. And when people drop out of these networks of communication, they become isolated, and that becomes a major source of problems. And Tao unfolds as a synergy of relatedness on the move. Normally, we are connected into this synergies, a two-way relational process of synergy, of informational flow. But when we cut off from it and become isolated, all sorts of blockages and problems arise. And what I saw in Toronto was numerous ways that Tao science and Tao healing technologies work with these blockages. And emotional logic is another way of working with the same sorts of blockages, but we can perhaps characterize them a bit more in emotional terms. We don't need to go into that, we'll come back to this. I'd just like to say that because of the way I look on life of human beings together, I interpret spirit as qualities of relatedness at a very deep human inner heart level. We're embedded in this sort of Tao, this wholeness of life. And we're moved by it. And the qualities of movement are what we mean by spirit and spirituality. We're sensitive to that, we're aware of it. We have our thoughts and our understanding. Some people move that into religious systems or philosophical systems that describe it with words. But underneath any word, underneath any religious or belief system is the movement that we're all participating in, and we're all looking at it from different angles. So I just want to be sure that the level at which I'm looking in this talk. Now, just to let you know the scale of this, 53 people from a general practice in England who had psychological problems, anxiety, depression, compulsive problems, they're on a waiting list for talking therapies. And it was a long waiting list. So we offered them the option to learn emotional logic, to learn about their emotions in a new way. And 53 people agreed to do that. And of them, only 3 went on to request therapy. Now, that to me sounds like quite a significant impact on people's well-being from understanding their emotions in a more constructive way, how they fit together to make a healthy adjustment process when we're feeling challenged and when there's change on the go, pushing us out of our comfort zones. So we end up feeling alone, isolated, and maybe not with the resources to cope with worry and so on. But understanding the emotions can build something that builds those relationships back into place. So we need to rethink our emotions and the qualities of our relationships. That's the approach that emotional logic's taking. So mind shifts about emotion. Many people come from cultural backgrounds, and this goes right back, 3,000 years ago, the Stoics and so on, were saying emotions get in the way of reasoning, get rid of emotion, regulate it, control it, let it pass, and just find a place of reasoning. Or the Eastern philosophers just find that place of peaceful connection in order to move through life. But what I'm saying, and you'll see where I'm going to go with this about love, is that most of us have an experience of grief, not only with bereavement when someone's died, but anything that we value. If we even see a risk that we might lose it, it'll trip off loss emotions, grief emotions. And grief is number two there. Grief is one integrated process of adapting. There are several interconnected emotions that make that process an integrated one. Grief is not one emotion among others. But all of those unpleasant emotions of grieving, and we describe 7 core ones, and then lots of other feelings of emotion around those 7 core ones. But all of those have useful purposes to move adjustments in a constructive way. But people don't like to experience them or to feel about them. They want to get rid of them. And therefore, these unpleasant emotions often cannot fulfill their useful purposes. That's what the mental framework of emotional logic is about, is giving you an overall structure that makes sense of where those unpleasant emotions fit in a process. Back to the chemistry of it, emotions are physical preparations for action in a situation or reflective withdrawal. They're not all in the mind. They're actually our embodiment, getting prepared to move in this world in a social setting with others. And this is the bit that people often forget as well, because they talk about feelings of emotion. That's my internal experience of this preparation state for action or withdrawal. Yeah. But people forget that their emotions are sending out social messages. They're communicating our personal values, the fact that our personal values are being challenged in a situation. Why is it that an emotion has a facial expression, that a tone of voice comes with it, that it affects our body posture? People can read our body posture, our body language. And also pheromones, hormone, chemicals come off in our perspiration, that other people, and particularly animals, can read these chemicals, and they know that something is being challenged, that is giving information that, watch out, something different is about to happen because someone's values are being challenged. Those social messages are flying around all the time, and we're often not aware of them because we're concentrating on our stories, what we want to do, the targets we need to hit, and so on. But emotional logic helps us to see those in a more constructive framework. Are we doing okay with this? Now, one of the things I was really been very pleased to discover on looking into Dao science more closely is how closely it matches my model of the real person, the whole person, which I've published for a number of years. So this diagram on the right, that squarely shape there, the 3-pointed, 3 semicircular loop shape, is called a triquetra. Triquetra means 3 corners, but not a triangle. And it's an ancient Celtic icon of the movement that underlies everything that seems constant in this world. It's all about life. The Celtic way is seeing life deep down. And I believe that's also the Tao, that out of this emptiness or no thingness emerges life and all of the structures and forms that we share as things move along. Now, the inner heart is that pre-conscious dynamic that's going on through our embodiment, through the soul, which I mean is what we mean by our life itself, the processes that are on the go. And the spirit, as I've already explained, being the qualities of our relatedness that are in the networks that we're part of. And they're united around someone's name. In another diagram of this, I call it their story. We're all telling a story of our lives. We have a narrative that we're willing to share with other people, but we can change that narrative as we summarize all of the movements, our inner movements. But the inner heart is deeper than words. It's those movements that are communicating into the wholeness. We're embedded in Tao, but also out of that, in through our brain's cognitive functions, we develop all sorts of ideas. We get orientated in space and time. We get orientated for conversations or to study it and observe things and tinker with life through scientific methods and so on. Or we push off into different ideas and creativity through the arts and the sciences, dance, song, and so on. You know, or we start thinking about social structures, that we need political structures. You know, there's all sorts of ideas that tend to occupy us, and our lives sort of people end up living in their heads around all of this conscious orientation and all of these ideas, forgetting that we are actually living souls, and that as a living soul, we are embedded in wholeness and communicating all the time in that wholeness. And this is where I found a complete coherence with Tao science, Tao healing technologies, that the truth of the person is in the inner heart, and it emerges, the light of our inner heart is emerging up through the chemistry and the physics of our embodiment and into our social networks. And if we can find the blockages in our inner heart and release those, which often is a pre-verbal process, then everything will flow. Things will flow better. We'll discover wellness, we'll discover that synergy of thriving with each other that Master Sha was so strong in talking about, the thriving that we can all share. So in Tao science, you talk about information, energy, and matter, Shen, Qi, and Jing. And in Shen medicine, there's the soul, the heart, and the mind. And the soul is the content of information, and that, I would say, is this middle real person. The heart, as we've got there, is the receiver information. Deep in our hearts, we're receiving information in a pre-verbal movement. And the mind, that top layer there, is the processor of information, which actually can be as much a source of problems as it is a source of solutions. So we need great care in how we think and how that limits or liberates us. And Shen medicine is saying we need to change the messages of illness to health. So if our heart is troubled, then it'll be sending messages of illness up through the whole system, which come out through our embodiment and through our communications into our social networks. Yeah. And emotional logic is saying exactly the same, different language. We're retelling the story more constructively for healthy adjustment to change. That is meaning the same thing as changing messages of illness to health and removing blockages to flow. And where we're going to go from here is looking at how we're able to map heart level blockages to flow and release those by an improved understanding of what the flow processes are. But none of that is an alternative to all that you know about through Tao science and Shen medicine. It's just another way of describing the whole thing, and maybe another set of conversational skills that might come in alongside for when people are having difficulty sustaining the healing practices that Shen medicine has been, or healing technologies have been introducing them to. That's maybe where emotional logic fits alongside what you're learning about. I hope this is all okay for you. A whole person is a heart level connection into the cosmos. I'm just reaffirming here. It's all about relatedness, and we're introducing a word with people I work with, betweenness. The life that we share in is the betweenness of these networks and systems, where the synergy of communication is building substance into life. Now, the term person, a whole person, the person is an innately relational term. It's like a father, cousin, friend, citizen. There has to be an other, right? So a father, there has to be children. A citizen, there has to be a state. A person is an individual of a people. So the idea is that there are collections of people, be they tribes, nations, families, you name it, but that grouping, that system of people, a person is communicating in that, and they can drop out of those communication patterns. So I'm now talking about a conversational cosmos. The informational flow is between people who are substates of this wholeness. And that's what this double triquetra diagram, the icon, I call it, it's an icon of the true communications, is about. This is an icon of conversational communication, where form, change, and relatedness, without going into too much detail, I don't want this to become too theoretical. I want to introduce the practices and the method to you, but there is theory behind it, which we could look at in more detail if people want to. But when two people are communicating around this relatedness element of the spiritual element of their inner nature, their inner hearts, each person becomes an ecology for the other. And that's very important to see, that we are embedded in a conversational wholeness with people who are different to each other, but they fulfill our inner nature. a whole person is incomplete alone. A whole person is relationally responsive and also has something to contribute, which is what we'll be coming on to. I'm still mapping the background to the tools that I'm going to introduce you to with emotional logic that map the inner tensioning, the tensioning of the inner heart. Just want to say, pick up that conversational theme again, the movement. I use a term called informenergy. There's both energy and information that's passing between two people who are communicating with each other. These girls are communicating at a heart level in their embodiment. Yeah, their relationship is manifest in the body movements, the soul that they're sharing with each other. Those two triquetri underneath, they could be individual people not communicating, or on the left, there's a double triquetra, a better icon of communication. And I just want to make a one point from that triquetra that's got the terms around it, without explaining how the brain is working, but the brain handles information in this pattern to generate impressions that we are communicating with each other in space, over time, and with an experience of reality that we often interpret as substance. Space-time substance is actually generated by our brains, but where is our inner heart? I'd like to suggest to you that every single molecule of your body is emerging out of the Tao. It's emerging out of the quantum field, as is described in science. It's emerging out of the light that is on the move in the background. And science of the science of medicine has looked at molecular physiology, as I call it, the way the molecules bounce around inside the body, all within a frame that molecules move like random in space and time. Well, they don't. They move in very ordered feedback patterns. Yeah. And those feedback patterns, the general organization of the conversations, is happening at what I call a physiology of light, deeper than the molecular physiology and emerging through the molecular physiology. This again is Shen medicine. It's the light within that's moving the molecules into patterns of movement that are either helpful or unhelpful. And so the last bit I want to say from this slide is informational movement is a verb. Information is a process. It isn't a verb, it isn't a noun. It's often used as a noun when you take Shannon's method of measuring, putting a number on how much information there is in this system at any one moment in time. Yeah. But actually, information is a process where the inner heart relatedness is repatterning the embodied form of life from within as people mutually change in a conversational relationship, which might be at a heart level, pre-verbal, before any concepts that we have of space and time, which is how I believe the dream that saved my life happened. That there was a pre-verbal, pre-space and time informational transfer that gave me information in advance of this passage of time that enabled me to change my mind and do something different. So that's what this is. This icon is about. We don't need to go into the depth of it too much. The point I'm trying to emphasize here is that the tensioning of our inner hearts has a profound effect up through the physical state of our bodies and into our qualities of relationship and into our spirituality. And that's where both Tao science and emotional logic are looking to work at the same depth. Now we're moving more towards the emotional logic method of understanding what's going on. The diagram on the right, what we're suggesting, the way we teach this, is that everything is revolving around love. That if you look at Tao or whatever terms you want to use for wholeness, wholeness is diversifying into substates and they communicate with each other. And the fact that they remain together in communication is love. It's an enduring connection despite all change that's going on. And when there's a harmony, when it's synergic, when there's a resonance going on between people, there's a joy. And love is in its joy mode. And that's what people like to think love is. Yeah. But unfortunately, because we are different, we'll always hit points where there's misunderstanding, where there's doubt, where I don't understand what you're doing, or there's a setback or a disappointment of something we're hoping for. And then suddenly the joy of love collapses down into a state of shock. What's going on here? I don't know what's happening. Yeah, I'm doubting my resources to handle this. And that moves on into the grieving process where there's several other emotions that we look at, which all have useful purposes, but many people get stuck here because they're unpleasant. They start going round and round in what we call messy whirlpools of turbulent loss emotions. This is where the heart gets turbulent and can get stuck. But there is a way out. There are two ways out, mainly, with others as well. But mainly we talk about bargaining and acceptance. Bargaining is what I do to get back something that I've valued, something that's important to me that I've lost in this process. Acceptance is I've named what it is that I've lost, but I've recognized I cannot get it back. I have to let go of it, but that will release energy to explore how I can move on, to find something new by which I can connect with people back into the living systems of life. So basically, we've got a cycle that's going on where love is in two modes. Grief is not the end of love. Grief is love moved into a more dynamic mode. It's a mode that is purposely unpleasant in order to move us to explore how to name what's important to us that we've lost, how to either recover it or move on, but to reconnect and rediscover the joy of love. This process can be going on a dozen times each day. Some of them can be very long lasting. The bereavements, obviously, 18 months minimum, years. But some of them are very brief and happen very quickly. When I've lost my wallet all of a sudden, I'm shocked, and then I find it. Oh, that's the end of the cycle. These cycles are going on and on. They're a little bit like stories that are shaping our lives until they're finished, until they've reconnected with the wholeness that moves us on. So we call this a life cycle diagram, which is not like the life cycle of birth to death. This is the life cycle that keeps us on the move every day. And this is where emotion is energy in motion. Now, in this, emotions are the informational process about personal values being communicated with each other, leading to shared action. But do you remember that whole person diagram, the cognitive level, the mind? Our mind actually becomes aware slightly after the knee-jerk reaction, emotional reaction of emotion is energy in motion. That happens at a heart level or a soul level. And then secondarily, our brains know about it. And that information up into our brain connects with our memories and our past experiences. And it's that connection with our unique history that brings on what we call feelings of emotion. So for some people, the same amount of an anger chemical response will result in absolute panic and hatred and so on. And others, it'll be just a bit of irritation because their experience of anger in the past has been different. So feelings of emotion can actually separate people and cause misunderstanding. Whereas the actual embedded, biochemical emotions, the physiological emotions, the preparation states for action and withdrawal connect people. They're not only people. All mammals are built in the same way. We know when a dog is angry or when a dog is guilty, and that will alter our behavior because we've picked up information from this animal. Watch out, something different's about to happen. Yeah. So we don't know how a dog feels emotion. We don't know how each other feels emotion, but we can find out. And that's what emotional logic is about. By conversational connection, by using these tools of emotional logic, we can get a much clearer idea of the way each other feels and how we can move on from there. Okay, hopefully this is sort of setting the context for it, because now I'm showing you really, there are two sets of tools that we have in emotional logic. I want to show you what we call the loss reaction worksheet. And the loss reaction worksheet is what I call the powerhouse for change. This is like a prior state. This is called stepping stone cards or feelings cards. They're lost cards, which people handle literally with their hands. They lay out these cards on the table, or you can do it online as well. And so handling the mouse, you're using, it's what we call kinesthetic, that we're connecting our feelings with our movements pre-verbally, except that as you move a card around that has the name of an emotion on, we've been amazed to discover that you're actually moving that emotion in some sort of mental space into the place where it's active for you. And we found that there are 7 genetically inbuilt core adjustment states, the orange cards, stepping stones for adjustment, we call them, on the imagery of crossing a river, on certain firm stepping stones to get you across. And here we organize our energy on these stepping stones to make a constructive move. Yeah. And then there's a whole load of green cards. We actually have 28 green cards, so 4 matching to each of the 7 things. These are what we call feelings cards. We actually have other tools where we've got even more, 16 feelings for each of these emotional stepping stones of a healthy adjustment state. And people can map what their actual unique experience is, and we can see into each other's hearts better. It works wonders for people in relationships, for couples. We have people saying things like, you know, we've been married 20 years. I just never knew you felt that sort of, you know, experience there. And people really feel they get to know each other at a deeper level. So we get people to lay these out. And then what we discovered over the years of doing this is that there are certain patterns in here that I, as a doctor, could connect with the sorts of diagnoses that we make for common mental illnesses. And these, particularly these overlaps of one card overlapping another, suggests, here, got anger and shock overlapping each other. It suggests that whenever I feel shock, I also feel angry. Whenever I feel angry, I also feel shocked. I'm going round and round and round between those two. And that can sometimes get to a state in a whirlpool where neither the anger nor the shock can fulfill its useful purpose. They complicate each other. And these are the traps. These are the blockages to flow. Because when these are each fulfilling their useful purpose, we have freedom of choice about how we move through it. But we can move through it because our emotional energy is fulfilling that adjustment process to move us out of the grief mode of love into the joy mode of love again. Is going somewhere. It has a purpose and a meaning as we get. But here we're mapping how it's getting stuck. And there's lots of information. We train our coaches to interpret these patterns and have conversational skills that can help people to learn how to move on from this. But here we can see that shock, for example, is present in the pattern. But also there are 3 other cards you can see highlighted: numb, anxious, and panicky. These are the sorts of feelings that this particular person experiences when their shock stepping stone is getting active to reshape their chemistry inside, to prepare them for action. But as you can see here, this particular person, in the situation they're facing when they lay out this pattern, has not only got shock, and this is one thing we've discovered, we don't have one emotion at a time. We have several, have patterns. Some people might just have 1 or 2. Yes, everybody's different. There's no right or wrong at all in the whole thing. But this person is really stuck. They're really struggling. They've got a lot of inner turmoil. And our coaches would be able to help this person to untangle that and to liberate that energy, which will then move on into the movement of life. Okay, so these are what we call the lost cards. The orange cards are the stepping stone cards. The green cards are the feelings cards. And we can map these tensions of the inner heart in this way. Now, behind this, there is a healthy adjustment process. And I'm going to go through an information sheet. I'm just sort of wondering how I'm doing for time. So this is the logic of healthy adjustment to losses hidden within change. The healthy adjustment process this is the logic of it. There are 4 stages of the adjustment process. In this change, can I recognize what I've lost or what I'm worried I might lose? Can I name them? Yeah. And if I can name this, is there something I can do to prevent the loss? Well, that's logical, isn't it? And if I've tried and failed and can't prevent the loss, if it's actually gone, is there something I can do to recover it, to get it back? Yeah, that's logical. And if I've tried and failed and can't get it back, but I know what it is because I've named it, but I can't get it back, what does life look like if I've got to let go of it? What happens then to my energy? Can I explore something new? So this is a logical process of managing losses, named losses. Can I name them? Can I recognize that I'm losing? Can I prevent it? Can I recover it? Can I let go of it? Yeah. And the problem is we never do it logically. We just don't do it. Even if you know emotional logic, I still don't do this. I will still jump to preventing a loss when something happens. And then I think, oh, hold on a moment, slow down, take a step back. Let's start trying to name some losses. And this is how the emotional logic can alter our natural tendencies. As I go through this diagram, we are not aiming to hope that you will go through every change in this pattern. No, this is theory. The reality is that pattern that you saw earlier. What I'm doing here is giving you a mental framework by which you can untangle that pattern to release the energy into movement, right? We're not dealing with theory, we're dealing with life. We want to liberate life so that it's the most enriching, most fulfilling, most synergic, most thriving life that we can achieve. So that's the logic of the adjustment process. Now, the direction of the emotive drives that happen as we encounter loss hidden within change, we can have an urge to change the world around us, so it's outwardly directed emotional energy, or we can have an urge to change the person I am inside, inwardly directed emotional energy. And this is one of the problems we human beings have, is that we can't really do both of those at the same time very efficiently. Yeah, that's what causes a lot of the tensions in that inner patterning. And each of these, what we call turning points, those arrows, by the way, we call them turning points. As you face a situation of change, I can turn to face it with that mental frame. Yeah. Can I recognize the losses in this one? Can I move on to the next mental frame? Can I prevent those losses that I've named? On to the next mental frame. If I can't prevent them, what can I do to get them back or let go of them? So yeah. But in each mental frame, those urges to do something about it, to find a solution, there's a pair of emotional states that matches to that. And this is one of the unique things that we teach in emotional logic. And shock and denial, we're not going to go into this in great detail. I just want to really give you the idea that there is a logic. We don't go through it, in a logical fashion. We're not aiming to. We're aiming to understand it so we can work out when we're feeling stuck. Why am I feeling stuck? How can I get unstuck? Shock and denial are a pair when I'm trying to I'm having difficulty recognizing loss. I'm shocked. I can't really think clearly. Let's shove it into denial. Just get on with it and ignore it and so on. Okay, denial has a useful purpose as well, but we need to understand how to use them constructively. Preventing loss, anger, the drive to go out into the world and prevent loss there. Guilty self-questioning, inwardly directing. Was there something I did to cause that loss? I'll move on to the next slide here. This is probably too small for you to read clearly, but we'll be able to share this, the PowerPoint PDF afterwards. Or if you decide to learn more about emotional logic, you'll get these on full scale. But this is the full sort of picture of it. Each of these emotional states has a useful purpose, the useful purpose of these states. And if we understand that, then I won't feel so bad about the fact that I feel angry, because I'll know that it's providing energy for me to take action about this loss that I've named. I won't get so hung up on guilty self-questioning, thinking I'm the cause of all the problems of the world. It's always me. What's wrong with me? No, guilty self-questioning is, did I do something about this particular situation that has caused loss? And if so, can I learn something? That guilty self-questioning drive feels so horrible, but it's there to help us to learn. If we didn't allow ourselves to feel that, we would never learn. And unfortunately, a lot of people are in that state. They just bounce along doing the same things they've always done, getting the same results they've always had until their relationship split. But if we actually can harness this for its useful purpose and learn what I could do differently and how to communicate that with other people, relationships would start to thrive and life would thrive. Recovering loss, bargaining is what I do to get something back. If I've tried and failed, then a growing sense of powerlessness and emptiness can grow. And that's what is the depression of loss. Now, that depression of loss is not clinical depression. We'll come on to what clinical depression is. It's what we call an existential state, where I've seen my limits and I don't like it, but actually it's a place of decision. We'll come on to this a little bit more. And what do I do about this named loss? Do I go back to try some more bargaining? Do I go on to acceptance? Yeah, I'm in that state where I can't decide. And that's where people get stuck in this one. And acceptance is two modes. There's a sadness that it's gone. I've got to accept that it's gone, but also it releases energy to maybe explore what else I could do. It's possible to be glad to be alive, even though bad things has happened. And that is because life is forever renewed. If we can allow this energy to flow, we get a renewal of life. Now, the last thing I want to say on this slide is you might see down the bottom, there are two sections. The first four of these emotional stepping stones, as we call them, to get across the river, make a stress cycle. If we get stuck in those, we go round and round and round between those, they will build up in us until we're feeling very stressed. There is a way out of it through the growth cycle. That horrible state of existential depression, the depression of loss, actually has a role within the growth cycle. We'll come on to that in just a minute. But basically what we're doing is reframing people's understanding of these unpleasant emotions so they don't become, so they're less self-critical and more able to harness this emotional state into its useful purpose to move us on in a constructive way. So those three make a growth cycle. Just going to say there's three phases of an emotional logic created conversation. I'm not sure if you can read this, but first of all, we teach that you need to make sense of your emotions. We've been looking at that with the cards and that turning points diagram, as you're saying. Then we name the hidden values that are activating those emotions. And once we've named those values, we can start selecting one to build an action plan based on a named value. These are the three phases. And we teach them in that sequence, making sense of your emotions, but go through your emotions to name the values that are driving them, and then pick on one value to make an action plan. And that will collapse the chaotic emotional state into a directional energy. And therefore the symptoms that come from that inner tense state evaporate because I'm now active towards a purpose that I have chosen. It's a named loss, and therefore it's something that's important to me. So that's the strategy. When you know how these three phases work for you, you can actually go through these in any order at all, but we need to teach it in a particular sequence. I hope I'm not going too fast for people. I'm just a little bit more before we come to the exercise. This is an example of something that we teach in that first green phase of understanding your emotions. The overall process of shock is of emotional logic adjustment is from shock, where I doubt my resources, to the growth cycle, where I develop new resources. That comes as a surprise to people that a loss reaction has built within it personal growth. It's there in order that we come through stronger. We've learned something through this process, but unfortunately we get stuck so often in the middle of it. And this diagram is basically saying that there are two ways out of this stuckness that we can feel: bargaining to get something back or acceptance. I've been told, of course, that it's only in the UK that we have roundabouts. You don't have roundabouts in America. But you know, this is the principle of what this is about. But there's a lay-by where you can pull off when you're getting low on fuel to reassess. And this is the diagram that we use to explain how that place of depression is a place of decision about a single named loss. Can I get it back? Can I try another style of bargaining? Do I have to let go of it? And that can be a difficult decision, so you can get stuck here. But if you can decide for a single named loss, it'll get your energy moving again. And then you get a butterfly effect where more and more energy gets moving and people find their way through difficult situations just because they started a little action for something fairly small. So what grows? This is a part of a growth cycle. So bargaining, you learn new bargaining styles. Acceptance, you learn how to explore something new. And on the loss of depression, what on earth can grow there? It's a place of decision. Once you really understand that, what grows there is your power of choice. You go to this depressive emptiness feeling powerless and empty. I've tried and failed. Don't know where to go. You come out of it with having grown in your power of choice about your personal values to know whether it's wise to bargain to get it back or wise to let go of it, and narrowing down to just one at a time. That's your power of choice that grows here. That's the growth cycle. We go round and round and round it 12, 20 times a day. So that was understanding your emotional world. The orange one, naming personal values. We're not going to get into this. I just want to show you, this is the loss reaction worksheet. We first of all get people to name, this is somebody who's been made redundant or is going to lose their job. Name what is hidden inside that. Map the emotions onto it. What am I feeling right now when I think about losing my wife's respect, when I think about losing independence, when I think about losing my potential for promotion? You know, we map it on, and then this is like a reconnaissance photograph. It's like an X-ray into your soul, into your inner heart. Whenever you think about losing the job, that whole pattern comes out just like that. And that's what makes you knee-jerk react. And the more you can understand it, the more you'll be able to harness that emotional logic rather than feel stuck with it. And you might see that there are two columns here with lots of ticks. That's how a whirlpool of emotion appears on a loss reaction worksheet. And these are the soul blocks that are shifted by action planning. These are the heart level blocks that trap us. And this is the third of those phases of a creative conversation, action planning, picking a single one, meeting my friends. Yeah. Something simple. But if I've been feeling overwhelmed with worry and shame, for example, about losing this job, maybe I haven't got the energy to pick up a phone and just phone a friend. But when we have these conversations, people might focus on something small like that. And then when you get to meet your friends to have a game of snooker or whatever, all sorts of other things start getting moving. And you suddenly discovered you've recovered half a dozen different losses. That's the butterfly effect. A small chink can have a large effect on someone's life and well-being. Yeah, so this is the way we map the inner heart. This is the last slide before we have the exercise. It's about compassion, basically. It's about understanding my inner heart, your inner heart, and how can I make a healthy response to this? People talk a lot about empathy in this. Sympathy and altruism are where I'm basically not particularly involved. I can reckon I'm sympathetic with someone's difficult situation. Altruism, I may be able to make a donation to the cause, but I can't get involved. I've got to keep going with my life. Empathy and compassion are more, my life is actually touched by this. I'm empathic. I'm feeling as if I'm in the other person's shoes. I can identify with where they are. Yeah. But compassion is where I believe we're actually moved into action by that. Making small, compassionate actions is the way intelligent kindness can start changing the world. And that's what emotional logic leads us into. Compassionate action. That's what the SMART action plans are about. Yeah, they move us into this corner of compassionate being. If we don't activate something around a name loss, if it's not an intentional activation, we end up possibly in an empathy state. And that is also, people can get empathy overload. They can get stressed by being so aware of the problems of the world and feeling powerless to do anything about it. And I'd just like to share with you that I believe is what's happening for large numbers of people around the world at the moment. Climate change is affecting everybody. Some people are very anxious about what it means. conflict, population shifts, economic challenge, by moving into understanding how intentional small actions around a named personal value can activate a compassionate way of living so that we build small networks of relationships, that's what will lead to adaptability, even in the face of overwhelming problems. So that's what I'd like to share, that Emotion Logic method can get inside what seems overwhelming, break it down into small achievable bits, pick one to work on, and then the butterfly effect happens. And suddenly I discover my relationships are ticking better, and that somebody's got an idea and I can team up with them. And so life can get moving again, or perhaps on a different scale, having moved to a different system. There we go. That's Emotional Logic. We've covered it. And I think probably the next slide is a story, but I think, Cora, it may be best if I allow an opportunity now for questions. Now, I've got more slides that I can go in after we've done the exercise, just to look at those blockages a bit more, if it's helpful, but it may not be necessary or helpful. Let's give people an opportunity now. Oops, hang on, I needed to stop sharing, sorry. There we go. So I haven't been looking at the chat. I'm not sure if there are any sort of questions in the chat, but this is an opportunity just to clarify for yourselves, because I've said a lot here, and I realize that it might seem overwhelming, but there might be some bits that have jumped out for any of you. Does anybody want to put a hand up and jump in with a question? Someone's asking, how did I meet Dr. Rulin? My goodness, that's a very, very good question. Dr. Rulin joined a webinar from an organization that I'm part of called the Scientific and Medical Network. And she came in and came up with a whole load of answers that people were struggling with. And I thought, oh, here's somebody who's seeing quantum physics in the same way that I'm seeing quantum physics, as being close to the inner heart and being locked into that. And if I might say, Rulin, you were very confident in the way you asserted your view about this. And it was so refreshing, because so many Brits are very hesitant and sort of, retiring and don't really want to offer an opinion. And so I contacted you afterwards, and it just started off this butterfly effect, really created conversation. So it was you exploring how to connect with other organizations that has led to this. Thank you. Yes, someone's saying they think a storybook would be a good illustration. Yes, you got there about it. So Tadmora, is it okay? Would like to unmute and ask you a question?
Sure. Hi, good evening. I'm so excited because I feel like there's, like, when one says there's something in the air. I've been writing about all what you're talking about, and also Dr. Rulin yesterday. It's like it's all happening at the same time, You get in this conversation, and I was asking my spirit, to please answer me a few questions. And I was wondering, how would be the ripple effect, or whatever, the butterfly effect, when I do a change in myself, when I change my story, my attitude, my emotions, my cells, right?
Yeah.
How would this affect retroactively in time, and because there's no time and space, the story of my family, okay? Or of the country where I live in, the history, as history, because we are part of history, her story, his story. And we can change in that way also the where the world is going, like the trajectory into the future. How much If there,
Well,
I know, I mean, I have a few questions, but let's go.
okay. Ooh, right. Let's start with that one. I share with you a sense that if you do believe in wholeness, if you do believe Tao is the source of all that we're experiencing and that we're all parts of that and relating together, and that that spans time, so that all past and all future is present in the present moment, and I call that the eternal now. Yeah. I'm working on a system that's looking at 3 dimensions of time, 3D time. And the eternal now is one of those. Now, whether we can go back and change what was there in the past, I really don't know. But I am absolutely convinced that if I change my heart now, that tensioning of my heart now, it will have some sort of ripple effect, or that is a ripple effect rather than a butterfly effect. It will have some sort of remote effect in the world, yeah, that may change the probabilities of people making different reactions as the present moment impacts their life, as they are moving in that present moment. You know, hidden down in this Tao, in this quantum field, if you want to call it that, it's a field of probabilities of things that might happen. And the 3 times, one of them is the linear time sequence of science. There is a linear time sequence of science, but also each one of us here in this meeting and everybody that we know has in their hearts a number of stories. There's a number of narratives that we're telling ourselves, and they affect the probabilities of the impact that our inner heart will have in this ripple effect spreading out. And if we can bring our hearts to a place of peace, not by simply skimming over it all, but by really knowing ourselves, first know yourself, right? Really, it is my prayer to purify my heart. You know, that first know your heart, work in your heart, and it will have unpredictable effects. And I really seriously believe that. But the trouble is, they're unpredictable. It's not like getting a spanner on a nut. You can't, you know, say it's going to have this effect, but you're part of the solution by truly believing that your heart is embedded in wholeness, and that we can alter our stories, our story time that's in the middle of it. And that will alter the eternal now, the paths that people take through the eternal now. Yeah. Tadamora, thanks for opening up that subject. Yeah.
Yes, because I see that there's all based on synchronicities, you know, and that's why I meant this was what is happening at this time for me is synchronicities, and that's why,
Absolutely.
and that's a bit of what you said that happened with you and the motorcycle. It was
Yeah.
also synchronicities, and I also ask myself, what is the root? Where does it come from?
Yeah.
It's
Well, okay. The other word that comes with synchronicity is resonance, and I know that that's a big word in Tao science, but totally with that. And resonances can happen across time, I believe, and across space. Without sort of going into that, where does it come from? Do you remember what I call the triquetra, that diagram with the movements, the integrated movements? They're all sine waves connecting with each other. They're interlocking sine waves of movement. One loop crosses over the other in approximately a 1/3, 2/3 ratio. Now, surprisingly, that's what the golden ratio is. The golden ratio is roughly 1/3, 2/3. And I believe that in the Tao, that is an icon of the movement that's in the Tao. And the Tao stabilizes into patterns through the golden ratio. I'm not sure if you're aware of it. Maybe some people in the meeting are. But the golden ratio is present throughout nature. It's even in the shape of the DNA. It's in the coiling of shells. It's in the shape of leaves. It's everywhere, shaping matter. And it shapes our inner hearts. It shapes our sense of artistic balance. It shapes our sense of musical harmony. So this golden ratio is a stabilizing ratio. And I believe that as we find that peace of inner heart, that honest self-recognition, we will become part of that resonant stabilization of life. And it's not a stabilization that will trap anybody. It liberates people into their own diversity, into the fullness of life. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. So if there are no other questions at the moment, perhaps I'll go back to that that story. It's a very simple story. I'm just going to ask each of you to put yourselves into that story and imagine how you would feel in the midst of it. Now, if you have one of these sites, you can get onto the card pattern generator. I will do that also on my site. So for anybody who can see how to do it. If anybody's able to generate one, and when we finish the exercise is willing to share the pattern, we'll be able to see something of this diversity that I was just talking about there. We're all so uniquely different. So, right, let me just... So here's the story. Imagine yourself in this story. You've been invited to an interview for a job that you really want to have, or if not a job, some sort of role, voluntary role, but this is something that you long wanted, and here's the opportunity. And you're stuck in a traffic holdup. It goes on so long that you can see you're going to miss the appointment. So you take out your phone to call the number just to let them know that it's not intentional, you know, you got stuck in a thing, and discover that your phone is now out of charge. You're stuck. Okay, can you hold that situation in mind? And now, hopefully this is going to work. I'm going to open up my tools site. Okay, now I'm not sure that, so this is for people who are not going onto their own sites. If you can go onto your own, and if you've practiced it before this meeting and you'd like to have a go at putting down a pattern that shows how you think you would respond in that situation, what emotions would arise for you, that'll be really helpful. But I'll also go through this for anybody who hasn't done that, so no one's going to miss out. This is the way the tools site looks when you get into it. First of all, you enter a new situation. And I'm just going to say, missed interview. Okay, I'm not going to give a description. I'm going to submit that. Here we go. So here's the new situation, missed interview. And I'm just going to come down here and open up a new card pattern, or we could open up a loss reaction worksheet, but I'll open up a card pattern. And here we see that I can show the feelings cards or not. And I could also reveal associations. I could also open the expansion or whatever. And here are the different emotions. So, oh yes, would I feel shocked? Now, is this large enough? Can you see this? Hopefully, can you read that that's the shock stepping stone? I'm doubting my resources. What on earth? I'm thinking about denial. I really can't deny it. It's just in my face. And I'm so angry about the jam. But I knew I should have set off earlier, you know. I knew there was a risk. Oh dear, I don't like to admit that, but I did. Bargaining, I don't know what that means. I haven't come across that before. Depression. I've got this horrible feeling it's growing. This depression is building up. Oh no, I've done it again. I've blown it again. I can't accept this, but actually I know in the past I have. So I'm thinking I'm going to go on to just have to accept it. But so here's a picture now of what's going on, and this is a sort of direction of flow that I'm experiencing it. But now I'm going to show the feelings cards. Am I feeling anxious? Yes, growing. I'm really anxious. Bitter. Oh, yes, I'm really bitter about this. So, but that's halfway actually between feeling angry and feeling guilty. I have to put it there. Blame. I'm blaming myself. I really should have. Carry on. Oh, no, I can't carry on. Come to terms with no despair. Oh, I'm just despairing about myself. I, I don't. Why do I always do this to myself? Empty. Yes, I'm feeling empty, empty, empty. Can't forget it. Full of hate. Well, no, maybe not so full of hate. I'm just hopeless. Yes, I'm the why. Can't ignore it. If only I'd set off earlier. Irritated. Oh, it's a bit stronger than that. I'm a bit more than irritated. Haven't moved on. Yep, my fault. Panicky. Actually, to be honest, yes, I am getting a bit panicky. Numb. No, I'm not sure I'm numb. Persuade, no, pointless. Well, it's pointless trying to do anything now. I'm just stuck in this. Sadness. Self-questioning. Yeah, I'm self-questioning like anything. Serenity. No, I have lost that. Stunned. Yeah, I'm stunned that I've done it again. Try. Don't know. Wanting revenge. No. What if? What if I'd done something different? Yearning. I'm yearning to be different. There we go. That's it. I have now put my pattern out there, and anybody could look on that and they would be getting to know me a bit better, especially if I'm talking it through as to why I've done it. And this is what we'd be training our coaches to do. And I can then reveal associations here by going up to this bit. So if I click on the anger card, it's now showing me that my anger is only manifesting as bitterness. Or if I click on my depression card, here we go, despair, empty, and hopeless. This is where I'm really ending up in a place of really horrible depression and this acceptance overlying it. Now that's bad news, to be honest. It's pointless as well as highlighted. I shouldn't accept being depressed. That's an unhealthy, that's an unhealthy whirlpool. That will make me very passive in the way I respond to the situation, just stuck, just, I'm always like this. You're getting the idea of how this works? And here's the shock, is panicky and anxious, but I'm also feeling stunned that I've done it again. So there's an example of it's a process of revealing my inner heart, ideally in a conversational setting, but you can do it just for yourself. And just to let you know that after 20 years of doing this, I still will lay out a card pattern for myself every now and again. If I'm facing a difficult situation and I'm not too sure which way to go and I'm feeling a bit tense about it, the kinesthetic handling of these cards cuts underneath all of my mind-based understanding of things. And you really engage with the inner heart. So here I am, stuck in a traffic jam, missing the appointment, and that's what's going on inside me. Yeah, and we can learn from that. Is there anything different that I could do, or what could I do to move through it? So I'll just stop sharing now. And I'm not sure what will have happened for people who've gone off. Fear what will happen, yeah. Yeah, Terry B, thank you very much. Very assertive bargaining. I'd immediately jump out of my car and ask other drivers if I could borrow their phone. Thank you. We talk about 3 different styles of bargaining: passive, aggressive, and assertive. And that's a very assertive style. So good. I'm sure you'll find the way through the situation if you're able to do that sort of thing. And yeah, Maria, yes, I think we often get stuck in situations something like this. So and Fibonacci sequence, thank you. That's somebody relating to the golden ratio. Yeah, thank you. Now, is there anybody there? Cora, Britta, yes. Have you, yes, unmute and tell me where you are with things.
No, I didn't use it, but I watched it, and I think it is, what I believe, what I notice in my clients is that your system can help one really to get to know yourself, yes? And
Mhm.
out of this emotion, get more into a different perspective, and that helps already. And that can help to release, and that can also show us where our main, like in the end, I understood it like that. Okay, if more cards are, sorry for my English. Yes, it's not my.
That's all right.
Yes.
Yeah.
So if the cards are blinking, so I can say, okay, I'm more in a depression mode. Yeah.
Yes.
Tao signs can help us to feel this depression. Yeah, allows us. So
Yes.
we can learn to be more honest to ourselves. Yeah. And
Yes.
to accept our emotions. Yes, I really like this
Yes.
way.
The
Thank
As
you.
I say, the Dow science, what I saw happening in the Toronto conference, that's moving into the movement to release these blockages, so you can be honest with yourself to recognize I am feeling that depression, yeah, and by following these exercises, I can start to release that. Yes, if you can achieve that, um, you'll be on the path to regenerative living, to renewed living, yeah. But there are times where people cannot put that amount of time to doing these exercises, or they're not motivated, or the depression overwhelms them and it distracts them. And what my suggestion is that emotional logic might add an additional set of skills, including the cognitive and the language, to find those people who cannot activate the Tao science or the Tao healing technologies. And I was talking with Dr. Peter Hudoba about this, and he was talking about his personal practice. And some people, you can just tell that they're saying yes, but they won't do these exercises. And when people come across that, people might find that emotional logic is another approach. And if at any point, or I would say parallel things, to learn those healing exercise movements of Tao technologies at the same time as doing card patterns. Now, my tradition in the background has come from what I call Celtic Christianity. So we talk about prayer a lot, yeah, but also meditational states. And we had a prayer group where people would start the prayer group by doing a card pattern. And then they'd offer up that card pattern in prayer and say, teach me, what should I learn from this? Yeah. And that's the sort of dynamic I imagine could happen in Tao healing technologies as well. That you might see it laid out there. You've engaged with it kinesthetically, and that by understanding the healthy process of adjustment, it might release that energy to actually do that Tao healing technologies. I mean, I've started incorporating that into my way of living here. I will be doing movement exercises when I'm facing situations, as well as thinking, what am I losing here? What am I worried I might lose? Is there an action plan so that my movement is not just to improve my personal emotional state? My movement is into an action plan based on a named value that will build a relationship with somebody else who maybe our relationship has run into a bit of a trouble. Yeah, so the movement is movement in the world relationally, as well as an inner reconciliation and an inner improvement. Is that sort of a fair answer? Does that explain how I see this may fit alongside things? And Rulin, if there's anything you'd like to say about how you see what I'm saying matching, then please, I'll be very happy for you to chip in here.
Yeah, I definitely see completely really admiring what you have done. I think I can see why this 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 the thing you developed, what I know so far, really can help people. So thank you for doing this very important work to help people, to
Yeah.
help them to become aware in the situation, so situation become aware of different things that within them, and
Yeah.
and through that then they can transform, right? And and then elevate their life actually to a higher level.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I would see that's completely parallel. That's
Yeah.
this is another way of beginning to get movement into the system, so you can
Right.
sustain the Tao
Yeah.
healing technologies to
Mhm.
build up a life from there. That, as you say, to move those resonances to a different level, more sustainable
Yeah.
level.
Yeah. Yeah. Recently, I've been teaching the students about become aware what's happening inside them, including the emotions, thoughts. So, and I can see this is very parallel to that technique as well. Yeah,
Right.
because you become aware, then you can transform them. You can change.
Yes.
And yeah, but okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mhm.
Thanks, Rulin. Britta, does that answer the sorts of things that you were bringing?
I think yes, and also, I want to add something that the great challenge, and that is where Dao Science and also your way helps us, is that most of people deny any feeling. Yes,
Yep, absolutely.
they don't feel. They do everything not to feel. Yes,
Yep.
and
Yep.
that is the thing. If we start to allow, and that is really, Rulin is doing this great course, and this brings. Again, maybe the theoretical background, to that,
Yes.
what
Yeah.
you bring, so that we can actually also go to help ourselves to come out of a situation, to go on this mind level that you bring,
Yeah.
and then from that to go in the Dao Science way to say, okay, I am depressed now, or I
Wonderful.
am angry.
Absolutely.
Now
Absolutely.
I can close my eyes and allow myself to feel, because I have released some of this energy. So I really love the cooperation, and thank you so much.
That's great, Britta. Thank you. You've clarified that really nicely. That's how I see it working. I would like to add, in a general sense, I haven't spent a long time looking at the loss reaction worksheets, but what we do is reinterpret those losses as values. And so what we do is we make a mental connection for people that this bad feelings that I have are only because I've got values that are being challenged. So I can stop criticizing myself. That's the trap that so many people get into. And as soon as people stop criticizing themselves and seeing there is a hope for renewal, whatever path works. And I will always recommend in the Tao technologies, the movement-based systems. And some people will want more sort of cognitive understanding things, and others will want to go directly into conversations with people that they're feeling troubled with. But we're all on a movement together to get that flow going. Yeah. Thank you. Anybody else want to ask a question? Or how are we doing for time? I could.
An hour and a half now. About an hour and 25 minutes.
So I'll be guided by your impression of how people might be feeling. I could show a couple more slides about whirlpools, but I think it might be just, going a bit too far for some people. Does anybody have any intuition? Cora, Rulin, what would you like me to do? I could spend just another 5 minutes showing a couple more slides.
Yeah, maybe 5 minutes and closing around 5 to 10
Yeah.
minutes. That'd
Yeah.
be good. Yeah.
Okay.
So I think some Tamara asked question, can I have a relationship with my inner being and the Tao and find out what is the blockage? What's your answer for that, Terry? Trevor?
Yeah, we all have a relationship with our inner self that is unnamed. And undoubtedly, in my way of thinking, when we do those card patterns, when we do the loss reaction worksheets, we are seeing our inner nature much more clearly. So you can increase the power of choice of how you relate to yourself, how you know yourself, whether you accept yourself or want to develop, whether you want to purify, whether you want to, learn certain new things. It empowers you to build the relationship with yourself so that you can build your relationships with other people in a more honest way. And whatever your concept of the whole, you build your relationship with the wholeness so that we're moving more in a way that's in harmony or resonant with the whole cosmos, generating life and so on. So yes, undoubtedly, I feel that those tools, but as Britta was saying, if you have that ability to become intuitively aware of yourself, and it liberates you by doing that, then that's your path. There's no essential thing about it. But undoubtedly, I feel that mapping those emotions and mapping those hidden losses, reinterpreting them as values, you are seeing your identity. So you can have a relationship with yourself. You're aware of yourself and then aware of how you relate to others more effectively. Yeah.
Actually, I did your exercise, and because recently there's some incident happened in my life. Actually, I got angry and blaming others.
Right.
So so that was a big thing, and I literally actually spent a couple of days to working on myself, and
Right.
and I really learned a lot through that experience. What's what is in that for me to grow next, and so that incident turned out to be very empowering to me. Yeah. And yeah, so some part of your exercise I can see can be helpful for me to further know about myself through that incident, and so that I can really transform.
Thank you. Thank you very much for sharing that. And again, I would like to think that at the end of this time that we have together now, there
Okay.
might be opportunities coming up for me to work with anybody who wants to learn more about this method. Yeah, so this might be the start of something more, working parallel with Tao Science, or this might just be enough for people to feel liberated in the way they approach things. So I just want to show this slide. These again are it's another way of demonstrating whirlpools that when, for example, anger and guilt turn up. So anger is an outwardly going one, guilt is an inwardly going one. This diagram is showing that these are magnified out of proportion to the healthy flow of all. But this combination, feeling angry and guilty at the same time, tends to generate feelings of compulsion. This is what leads to obsessional compulsive behavior, impulsive self-harming, eating disorders. It really keys into some problems that trap people's lives. And as people lay out card patterns and they see they've laid out anger and guilt together, and we can teach about the useful purpose of anger on its own, the useful purpose of guilty self-questioning on its own, and people can stop criticizing themselves for those, can recognize they need to keep them apart so they don't complicate each other. Those feelings of compulsion go. We've had people who've been able to stop self-harming behavior after just 1 or 2 learning sessions of emotional logic, because they've seen this emotional dynamic in a different way. But then also when anger, which is the outwardly driven action, I've got to take action in the world to prevent something, when that gets tied up with depressive emptiness, right, they change their meaning. So depression is I'm feeling empty and powerless. The anger is driving me out to do something to break this feeling of powerlessness. And unfortunately, that leads to destructive drives. It can lead to vandalism, to confrontational behavior with people, and to suicidal thoughts. I'm going to take action against myself to end this feeling of emptiness. Just end it, So this is working at a very deep level where people are stuck with serious issues, which might, resolve with a psychological influence and counseling. I mean, we pioneered counseling in the practice. I'm fully supportive. And then I found that sometimes insights like this can liberate people to stop criticizing themselves and to harness these unpleasant emotions into, and this is the key bit, getting onto your growth points for the named loss. This is the way out of the whirlpools. That when these are magnified out of proportion, if we can get onto bargaining and acceptance, then for a named loss, people will find a way through. And then you lead to an action plan. And one of the action plans may well be, I will commit to doing the Tao technology movements 2 hours a day. That may be an action plan. Yeah, you can integrate in this way. Now, I said I'd mention something about clinical depression, because this sort of depression is just, I've tried and failed type thing. It's the blues. It's what's the point? It's why bother? But there are several whirlpools that can involve that feeling of emptiness, powerlessness, why bother, what's the point, you know? And each of these produces a different feeling, a different symptom. And depression and shock together. We did a lot of work with people who had chronic fatigue syndrome, ME, some people call it. And we found time and time again, they were getting depression shock whirlpools. And I can talk about the hormone chemistry of these as to why it in fact impacts your immune function, so that people get recurrent illnesses and so on. There's a very close association between bouts of fatigue and these two emotional states complicating each other. Depression and denial. People go on autopilot. I know you might have heard of presenteeism. People go to work, but they're very unproductive. They just sit at the desk. You know, the lights are on, but there's nobody in. All right. And that people are pretending it's all okay. It's basically the background to dissociative thinking as well. Depression and anger, we talked about destructive drives, even suicidal thoughts. Whoops, Daisy. Depression and guilt, low self-regard. This is often the trip that puts people into clinical depression, because all of these together strain the body's chemistry so that the normal day to night cycle of chemical, which is your chemistry is active during the day and quiet at night, gets flattened off, and people enter this state of depression where they're not able to respond to the world in a constructive way, or they abreact and have angry outbursts. So agitated depression or retarded depressions. What it is basically all of this is grief. It's all grieving. And the problem is that people present to doctors or psychologists, but particularly doctors in England, saying I'm depressed, and the doctor says, yes, you're depressed, have some antidepressants. But if people took a bit of time to understand their emotional states as grieving, and then we say, you know, you'd only grieve if you loved. That makes you more of a human being, not less. Yeah, join the human race. The more you understand your grieving, the more you'll be liberated to set your energy free to explore how to renew life. You know, and people, they get their energy on the go in order to learn how to do things. But certainly when these whirlpools are all on the go, the body's chemistry gets stuck, and then you've got an illness. So you've actually got a clinical illness of depression because your chemistry is stuck and people cannot just think their way out of it. So 3 months of antidepressants while people's thoughts get moving so they can learn, then learn emotional logic. Then, as I will now say to you, as an assertive action plan, as part of emotional logic, get going with your healing technologies, get going with the movements, get going with those meditative states to really build up your inner strength in that way. So this is the model of clinical depression. There's a parallel one for anxiety states where instead of depression, it's shock down there. Don't need to go into that at the moment. But I just wanted to show you that this is how grieving, initially a healthy process of adjustment by which we learn new things and come through stronger. That's what grief is inbuilt to us for. But it can get overwhelmed, so it gets stuck. People find it unpleasant, so they don't engage with it. And in extreme, it can get pushed into these sorts of states where it actually becomes an illness. But we can reverse that, hopefully, if we catch it in time and build the right relationships. I'm not going to go into the. I could talk about traumatization, and we lead into post-traumatic growth. So the coming through stronger, we've found that it works really well on traumatization. I'm aware of time. I don't want to go into this. Basically, we've studied it and we know that we get very good results and it's very safe. No spots below this line of random change. So it's a safe and very effective method of helping people to improve their lives and so on. And this is the wholeness model. Never mind. Just want to leave you with that sort of image. We can come back to this at some point. But this is being the presence of loving kindness. This is where it all goes. That's the purification of our souls, is to become the presence of loving kindness in wholeness, having that ripple effect, being able to activate butterfly effects where we get stuck to transform what's going on, and we become part of the solution rather than part of the problem. So thank you very much for listening and for joining in on this. Obviously, time for questions if you want to. I'm aware time has gone, but
Oh,
you.
I have a question, if that's okay. I've put myself on camera, but there's no light. So how is this treatment available? I mean, where, yes, I can ask it like that, because I assume it's not something that's provided by doctors.
Absolutely. If I maybe sort of, well, Cora, could you type in the Emotional Logic Center? It's the Emotional Logic Center website. Oh, Karen, hello there. Emotional Logic Center, there's the English spelling of center, .org.uk.
Okay.
You could access the site there. And also put in a request. We can either arrange one-to-ones or people can join courses. We'd like to encourage people to join courses or learning groups. We've got book reading groups that we could set up. There's all sorts of ways that people can learn at their own pace and how to, in a way that's relevant to their own lives. But basically access through that. But I'm willing to, to receive, if you were to send emails to Cora, she might be able to forward them to me, and I could make a response directly to people if that would be helpful. I'm very happy to do that. I realize, having introduced this, it'll touch people's lives in many different ways, and I do want to say this is the beginning of something. This is not just a one-off. I want to be available to see how things shape up. Is that okay, Karen? Was there a
Yes.
specific thing you wanted to ask? Or
Actually, is it something that's accessible by internet, or do you have to be in person?
No. We do a lot of using Zoom usually, remote. We call them personal learning appointments, PLAs, and we can do them with individuals or couples or a small family group, or so on. Yeah, we do a lot of remote work.
Thank you.
Yeah, good. Thanks.
Also, I saw some questions, but feel free to unmute yourself if you have any question for Trevor. Yeah, so I saw some questions here, maybe, but if you have some question you have not been answered, just feel free to ask. And Karina already put the website link for Trevor's. Yeah, so you can click that and go to their website.
Someone who has not completely removed childhood trauma from heart, I would like to learn more about your methods. Each slide is very impressive. Thank you. This is, yeah, Sybil. I'd just like to say, I do share this. One of the reasons I've developed Emotional Logic is I had myself come from a traumatizing family background. And this is part of my healing path, was to understand emotions in this way. And then I found it worked for me, and I've shared it with other people, and it works for them. So I also know from that when you have had a traumatizing time in childhood, there are certain trigger points that will remain with you. They become little things that you can trip over still. But what Emotional Logic does then, I have that understanding, you can recognize it happening much more quickly, and you've got strategies in place that you can say, I don't need to go down that route into destructive behaviors or whatever it was, or withdrawal behaviors that I used to do. I can actually harness this. I can get into the values that are being challenged. I can start making action plans. I can build relationships so I'm not getting isolated. And people can just catch it early and change it into a different direction. So there's undoubtedly this can work. This can work with people who've got traumatizing experiences. It's not going to be a magic wand, but it certainly does open a path for personal growth, post-traumatic growth. It happens steadily, and it becomes a very solid path to develop life again after. Yeah. Is Dr. Trevor going to offer some classes? I most certainly can. This is something we haven't actually talked about. But the short answer is yes, if you would like. But I need to talk about this with Rulin and other people. But I would actually really value an opportunity to share in greater depth and to spread this with people, learn, you know, some sort of learning club or learning group that we could set up.
But you already have some classes, right? You, I
Yes, we
remember you
do.
yeah.
So
Mhm.
yes,
Maybe
so
I'll share the link for that, or
yeah, well, we offer something called a Foundation Award, which covers the basics in a very solid way. You sign up for an 8-week course. There are 4 webinars. There's coursework that you get marked feedback on. You have a one-to-one person appointment to apply it to your own life. And that Foundation Award sets you up with a real confidence that you can share this with other people. So you can share it with family, work colleagues, neighbors, you are equipped to make a healthy response when you see somebody else challenged, as well as detecting what's going on inside you and catching that early, you know, so that you can work it that way. So I would always recommend Foundation Awards. They are, you know, the really solid core. Many people find it difficult to commit to an 8-week course like that, or the financial things. I mean, we can make financial plans for that because there is quite a tutor commitment into that. But there are also other introductory learning styles which can be either much less expensive or even very low cost, or even free. Sometimes we do as a charity. So yes, we definitely do this. Yeah. So basically, thank you, Rulin. Again, if people go on the site and if you'd like to book in, they're all done on Greenwich Mean Time or British Summer Time. So in America, Canada, you know, you'll be 5 to 8 hours difference. So therefore, our evening courses will work well for people in the American continent. And it'd be great to join in, but lots of options are open. For my work with people with self-harm and attempted suicide, it would be very helpful for me to learn how to share this technique with our service users. Okay, so at this level where you're working with people, after the Foundation Award, that gives you the basics of it. And I will say this to people, all the solutions to these entanglements come through what you learn on the Foundation Award. But we have found that people whose lives are really stuck, who are self-harming, who are suicidal, who've got very entrenched problems, they need to learn how to apply it into their lives. And that's what the Coaching Award is. And the Coaching Award goes on from Foundation Award. It's a 10-month casework supervision program. There's more learning on it. It's all about systems thinking and so on. But you get a personal tutor. There are monthly webinars, coursework, and so on. So if you actually want to include it in your work with people who've got this level of problems, do the Foundation Award. Look to joining the Coaching Award afterwards. You'll get casework supervision to apply it to people with very complex problems. Yeah, thank you. What are the ranges for timeframe for recovery? It'd be a very broad timeframe. Yes, Karen, this is, it's just so remarkable. Some people pick up emotional logic, they're just sort of intuitively there, and it utterly transforms their lives within just a couple of weeks. Others, you're talking about 18 months. When I was in general practice, one of the advantages of the British system was we had long-term connection. I would have patients who would come back and say, you know, 2 or 3 years ago, you told me about something to do with emotions, and I couldn't get it then, but I feel ready for it now. You know, there's a timeliness about this. And some people, as soon as they connect into the idea that they no longer need to be self-critical, that these emotions have useful purposes, that they're all about your values. And people have been telling themselves, me, I don't have values. What are you on about? You know, I'm useless. No, we say, no, you have got values. This is your identity. And you can build on that. And when people get those levels of understanding, it transforms life very quickly. That's part of the butterfly effect. So as you say, the ranges for time frame are enormously variable. But it doesn't mean to say that somebody who's taking a year or whatever to find some new way through, it doesn't mean that they're wrong or failing in some way. They have got very complex problems. And you would learn about that on the Coaching Award, how to manage that and how to keep the relationship, to allow them time. We have a rule. We teach our coaches, you never pull anything out of denial. It's there for a reason. Denial has a useful purpose. And I know some methods of psychology do encourage people to get things out of denial. We say the exact opposite. All you do is build the relationship. And when somebody feels safe in the relationship, they will start to share in their own time. And that might be 18 months or whatever. It might be 2 weeks. It's safety. It's a matter of safety and people knowing that they've got a relationship that can bear this. Is that okay? Yeah, thanks.
Beautiful. Yeah, so thank
Yeah.
you so much, Trevor. I think that we answered most of the question, yeah?
Yeah, it looks like it.
Mhm.
I think so. Yes, and
Yeah.
but I've just seen one there, and I would simply say that emotion logic does not conflict with any other therapeutic approach because it's all about conversational skilling. It just improves the depth of conversations, and people can use any other therapeutic intervention alongside this, and many do that we train. So I've said enough there. And I'd just like to say once again, thank you ever so much for this opportunity to share with you all. Thank you.
Thank you. It's very enlightening. I learned a lot and always curious about your work. And this is great introduction. And yeah, definitely encourage people to learn more. And yeah, Trevor Cliff, right? Oh,
Yeah,
what's
no,
your
I'll spell it out here.
Yeah.
It's a
T-R-E-V.
weird Welsh name. Trevor
Yeah, great.
Griffiths.
Oh, Griffiths.
Virtually impossible to say for some people.
Thank you.
To support my family, I'd like to learn more. Wonderful. Yes, we will find ways of doing this. Just keep in touch and something will happen. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you yeah, then we can talk more, or if you have some follow-up information want to give to today who attended, we'd be happy to help send your email to them. Yeah, Trevor. And
Fabulous.
also I'm glad, because Trevor is also very intellectual. He's working on some very, very very abstract things as well. And actually I got some insight about that. So we will talk about that in the future.
Lovely. Okay.
We get together. Yeah. And also wonderful to learn about your approach, and I welcome people who attended. We have almost some peak time, more than 70 people attended. So welcome you to learn more from Trevor. And yeah, thank you, Trevor, for your love support for the Dao science. And I really see it's completely parallel, and even yeah, and we're definitely on the same frequency and wavelengths. I think Dao science, yeah, we have different approach. Part of in Dao science we approach with the spiritual and quantum vibration, and also heart. We teach people become aware to use the heart to feel, to release and or learn from the emotions. Emotion is actually there, like you said, they actually come here to empower us. They teach us something very powerful. So you actually, by connecting with them, feel them, then you can be empowered and coming out of that stronger, like what you said about the grief. It's really a beautiful process. If we really can process it, go through with it, it's it's a beautiful process. But when you get stuck, and I'm glad you showed all the way pocket, right? And that's just the problem occurs. Yeah, so very enlightening. Thank you so much. And also thank you for all the great work you have been doing and your network helping so many people. Wonderful. Yeah, we do have recordings. We'll send the link for recordings, and you can also later watch it. And also on our website, we have recording for all our seminars. You also can go there to watch the other seminars. Yeah, thank you so much, Karina. Karina, you want to say something? Karina is the one organizing everything. I'm so grateful for what you're doing, Karina.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Yeah, it was really, really lovely to have you here today, Dr. Trevor. Really, open-minded That's very, very important. And I think that this technique works very well for people that understand, learn more with visualization, you know, because once you put all your emotion, all the sensation, the feelings associated around, it's like, for me, was like, oh, there are so many in this category and not so many here. So it's very, yeah, I loved it, and I thank you for the exercise. It really helped me to see one of my patterns, I would say, one of many. Yeah, thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Master Olin, for everything that you are doing, for all the your invitees that you are bringing to our science seminars. Thank you so much, everyone, for your presence and for your commitment to move forward in your journey. Thank you so much. And the recording will be sent out to all the people that registered.
Love you. Yeah, take good care, and let's move forward with this new science and bring this to humanity. Yeah, thank you everyone for your work you're doing. Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.